Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, and I'm here as host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. I like to invite guests who have had some struggle with finding their voice, speaking up. It's always a question I have in my mind about what happened that they come into adulthood and don't feel as free to be who they were meant to be, to offer their gifts and to express themselves authentically in this world. So today I've invited a beautiful, wonderful new friend I have, and I'd like to introduce you to Elaine Williams. Elaine, and I have some pages here I'll just read off. Elaine has been a comedian, an award-winning comedian, by the way, and she's been on places like Saturday Night Live, of all things, and America's Got Talent, ABC, NBC. It sounds like you name it. She's been featured on all sorts of places, and having been an award-winning comedian, she's also joined with Kathy Keegan to do a podcast, and I was on that podcast. It's called Still Human. Look it up. Still Human. It's about people being together and being real with each other and having a good time, laughing. And I enjoyed myself on that podcast with Kathy and Elaine. One of the things about Elaine is that she's a coach and she helps people do video. Hello, she's been comfortable on camera as a comedian, so she's turned a lot of her expertise into helping others be comfortable on camera. And her clients have gone from never doing video or speaking live to having their own YouTube channels, doing international book tours, and speaking for, I guess, NASA, National Associations of Speakers, I think.
It was for NASA, actually. One of my clients spoke for the science people, the space guys.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I was thinking NASA, what is that? Okay. It is NASA, the NASA. And she helps women go from speaking to speaking with conviction. Boy, I like that phrase. Feels like we could just spend time going through your bio and having a good time talking about everything that you've done. But she's been all over the place. Her mother said she was a late bloomer, and when it came to talking as a baby, and she's been making it up for it ever since. I think let's get to talking.
Oh, yeah, that's enough. That's enough of the bio. No, thank you, Doreen. Thank you so much. I have to tell you, from the moment I met you, I just feel this sisterhood kinship with you, and the way you speak about who you are and what you do moved me. Mm-hmm. And I aspire in many ways, because sometimes I'm like, woo! So I'm working on being slightly more mindful, not trying to be too professional or polished, but choosing my words carefully, because they do make such a difference, not just for people listening, but for ourselves. So anyway, I'm honored to be here, and I'm really delighted, and yay. And it was so much fun to have you on our podcast. So it's really great to see you again.
I know. I'm excited. So what I'd like to start with, the first portion, is usually just opening up the exploration, the sharing of your story about, well, so what was it about you not having a voice? And what, I mean, I've talked to you, so I know you are self-aware, you're articulate, you've done a lot of personal growth, a lot of inner work. So I think that if you could begin and just tell us about what it was like not having a voice. How was that for you? What happened that, you came into this world naturally a bright, beautiful little girl, but something happened. So let's start there.
Sure. And I think, like so many people, I grew up in dysfunction. I was born in 68, which was one of the most crazy, tumultuous years ever, at least in America, right? And I know that my family was doing the best they could, but they were dealing with their own issues. My parents married when they were so young, so they divorced when I was 4. And I think I had this experience as like, something is wrong. Something is wrong with me. Something is wrong with the world. And I also had this big gap inside this hole. And I spent a long time trying to fill it with lots and lots of things. But I think, and nowadays we have so much more knowledge, right? Like they're teaching meditation and breathing techniques to kids in high school. Thank God, right?
Yes.
But, and I tried to introduce it to my niece and nephew 10 years ago, and the teacher wouldn't let them play their thing, but now they are. So it's like, okay, you know what? Better late than never, right? But at the time, I don't think we knew that kids could be depressed or kids could be anxious. And I was all of those things, but I didn't have the words to articulate it. And I felt like something was wrong because my family got divorced, nobody else got divorced. And then we kept moving. And so I'm sure there was a part of it was like, I felt like I had no control, and it didn't matter what I said because nobody seemed to be listening. And I get that was from my perspective, because I know, I had food, I had clothing, I had shelter. My mother was listening in her best way possible. It wasn't like they were shutting me in a closet, but my experience was I needed a lot more than they could give, and I think that's important, because I think sometimes people think, well, I wasn't abused, I wasn't hit, I shouldn't have these issues. But if you have that experience of not feeling heard, not feeling understood, feeling like you don't belong in your family, which is such a common feeling for women I've met in recovery, it's feeling like, did I get in the wrong? Am I in the wrong? I mean, I know I'm not really adopted, but I'm the black sheep. And I still feel like that to a degree. I am a beloved black sheep in my family most of the time, but like when you don't have all those words. So anyway, so I had this experience of like no control, had to keep moving, had to keep, and I had my tonsils out. So I always think this is interesting too. Like I was sick all the time as a little girl. And I think it's because I had no voice, literally. When they take your tonsils out, you can't talk for a while. You have to relearn how to talk, how to drink, how to eat. So, I never made that connection really, but that was all part of it.
Well, being sick is obviously the body saying something, isn't it? It's about saying, hey, I don't feel healthy. And
hello, right.
yeah. So that the environment impacts us, and even having emotional impact is the body responds, and it's painful, saying, help me. And so that help me feels like what being sick was, like take care of me. That's what sickness is about, isn't
right. It? Absolutely. Yeah. And then, and then my father remarried this woman who, God, talk about talent. She had so much talent. She was charismatic. She had no education, very little education, but she could have done anything. Like but she had a lot of trauma, and she was probably undiagnosed bipolar and became a raging alcoholic addict, incredibly abusive. And so I went from not feeling seen or heard to feeling like targeted. So I I went from not being heard to sort of becoming the lightning rod of the family. And so even though I was being, but I wasn't listened to, anyway, I could go on and on, but spare you all the dramatic stuff. But it was, it was a very traumatic time, and it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to speak the truth because it would be used against you.
Oh my goodness, that phrase, what you just said right there, I think is resonating with listeners, that it wasn't safe to speak your truth. And it sounds like in that new family environment, especially there. So if you spoke your truth, you said it wasn't safe. What might have happened? Or what did happen?
Oh, just anytime you admitted an insecurity or a mistake, it would end up getting thrown in your face, at some point, not right away, but soon after.
So like ammunition, you're saying.
It was ammunition, yes. Mm-hmm. And I was bulimic. I started starving and binging and purging at a very early age, and was full blown. And by the time I was 12, and my dad and my stepmother would say, we're going to send you to rehab. And I wish they had, but they would say it like it was such a threat and such a bad thing. And so I was afraid to say, that might be good. Like it seemed like it was the worst thing. So I would just lie. Like it's not logical. But, and my stepmother would say, are you taking laxatives? And I'd be like, no, even though I was, because it just didn't feel, it wasn't safe. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's another example of like not being able to speak your true voice.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Wow, Elaine, it's just listening to you, I feel, I'm holding space because it is a lot of trauma, a lot of negativity, toxic environments for you, yet you found your way. Here we are today. So what happened that you woke up and said that you, or is there more to the story about how?
No, it's great. I just was laughing. So, thank you for holding the space. And, I'm so grateful because even though there was always chaos, I had a horse trainer who was my mother in many ways. I had a choir director. Like, even though my family was, God always sent me these angels. And I had a therapist who saw me for years on a sliding scale. Like, and I just think about all the healers and teachers that have helped me along the way, and what a blessing you are, and the work that you do. And anybody listening, you save lives, even if you don't know you're doing it every day. You do, and you have, Mm-hmm. So, so like, and what's crazy is when you're growing up in dysfunction and everybody's going to this therapist, but nobody's telling the truth. So it's kind of like a lot of wasted time and energy and money. Mm-hmm. Right. So anyway, luckily I left, I went to college, blah, blah, blah. I did a little bit of healing. And then I found this course called the Landmark Forum. And I'd heard about it for years. And then I went, and all these people were standing up and they were like, I just did this. I just did that. They were self-expressed. They were happy. They were joyful. And I hated them. You know what I mean? Like, because they had what I wanted. And here I was, back-to-back shows, cute boyfriend, house sitting gig, best restaurant. I am like living what I thought would make me happy. And I am miserable because there was so much inside work I was so out of touch. And thank God I did the Landmark Forum. I signed up. It's a 3-day course, and I had a huge spiritual awakening, and I was able to forgive these people, my dad and my stepmother, who, and It's like the third day of the course. I'm like sobbing and weeping and snot, and it's not pretty. And I'm sweating and I'm running to the payphone. That's how long ago this was. And I'm like, Daddy, I'm doing this forgiveness course. And he was just like, okay, are you okay? Did you have a car wreck? And I was like, no. And I realized in that moment, Doreen, he had been loving me the only way he knew how. Which like breaks my heart.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to talk about theater or yoga with me. Like, he didn't know how to stand up to my stepmother. He loved me through my car. So that right there was like, and then I said, I love you and I forgive you and I hope that you can forgive me. And he was like, okay, like, but he heard me. And more importantly, I said the words to him. And then my stepmother got on the phone. She was crying. I was crying. And I said the same words. And I sat there shaking and I felt like black clouds of energy, like leaving my body. And, and I'm so grateful. It was it was like a spiritual awakening. And it was like intellectually, I had been reading Deepak Chopra and listening to Louise Hay. But if someone says you need to forgive, but you don't know how, if you don't have the tools or the process, right? And so I'm so grateful that I found the place and the timing and everything. And I said, I don't know what just happened in this course, but I'm going to do more. And so I did 2 more years of training with Landmark, which then in turn helped me get sober as I moved to New York City, which again, would not recommend, but that's how I did it. So that was another like huge line of demarcation in my healing process.
What a journey. I'm so blown away with the everything you've said so far, the moments. Yes, it is dramatic, but you are, sounds like you're somebody who's able to, to live on that edge, but now finding a way to be able to dance on that edge rather than scrunch around and kind of crawl around. It's like you're standing up saying, hello world, from your heart and your soul and your gut. The spontaneous you is so fabulous. So from that point, you're a coach now and you help people. You help people in all sorts of ways, not just video, but tell us more about that. Like from that moment, you obviously have developed a business and a profession.
Well, thank you. And I'd love to go back just a smidge because I feel like this might help somebody because, it's kind of like, okay, I'm sober, I'm auditioning. Why am I not on Broadway? What, and, there was a lot more healing to do and a lot more training. And, but I had this ego and this, like, I got to make up for lost time. And, in living in intense city, when you're already intense and then you're adding intensity, it's not a great recipe, People would go, you're funny. You're a little intense, Elaine. Have you thought about improv? You're kind of intense. Have you thought about comedy? And I'd done Neil Simon and musical theater comedy, but I didn't have a lot of sense of humor because it was just hard. I knew one person. I had to figure out how to make money and audition, and New York City, it was a lot. And luckily I kept going to AA meetings. And then I met this woman, Debbie Ford, who again, my friends have been talking about forever. And she did a one day at Omega. They used to come to New York City in April. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm sober. I'm moving. And I just did a commercial, I'm like, 5 minutes into the meditation, I'm sobbing like the entire day. And I was like, whoa, had no idea there was still so much there, and realized, wow, I keep myself so busy pursuing my thing. There was still a big disconnect. And thank God I was like, I'll have some more of that, So I trained with her for 5 years, and that's how I became a life coach, because I loved her work. I feel like Landmark was a lot about mindset, and I felt her stuff was a lot about emotional education and release. And they're both great, and hers just was a lot deeper. And but I would not have been ready for it, I think, until then. And that's when I found, layers. And so that's when I found I'm a G. And then after Debbie Ford, I did Peak Potentials. And I was like, I don't know anything about marketing. And then I fell into speaking. It's an evolution. It's still an evolution, right?
Right. Yes. Well, I'm glad we're friends, and I get to be on this evolutionary journey with you as we go forward.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm glad you put that piece in. I didn't realize that. So that really makes a lot of sense, from the forum to Debbie Ford to even deepening around the spiritual work, and becoming more confident as a coach and developing your expertise. So yeah, now tell us about what you do.
No, I always just feel like I need to be reminded, right? Like sometimes I say I'm a slow learner, but sometimes I need to hear something, and sometimes we have to hear it many times, and we're in a different place, and then we go, oh. And I think, it's just great to be reminded of that. It's an evolution. Nobody rolls out of bed, ta-da, I'm a master, right?
Yes.
So I'm doing stand-up by this time, and I wasn't good in the beginning. People kept saying, you're funny. I took a class. I didn't know how to write. I'd go home and cry. And then the very first comedy show that I did in 2007, when I started talking about the dysfunctional family, I saw people bent over and laughing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to help people. And my life made sense.
Oh,
not everybody's going to go to therapy. Some people will come see comedy or see me speak, and so that was a big missing piece. And now, because I love comedy, because it helped me lighten the heck up. And, if you can laugh while you're learning, you're winning, right? And so my intention is always to infuse comedy into whatever I'm doing, because it helps us breathe and laugh and connect human to human. And oh my God, you do that, I do that. Oh my God. So I just think it's more fun,
I love the phrase, laughing helps you learn. The whole idea of laugh and learn. That sounds like a program. Laugh and learn.
Yeah. It's so true, right? So anyway, so all of that was sort of, part of the evolution with the coaching and the speaking. And then, I thought I was supposed to do these heavy topics on college campuses, which was hard, Doreen. Like, I really thought, okay. But I also had this pulling that I was supposed to do something bigger and bigger platforms. And so I was talking about assault before the Me Too movement was so mainstream. And that was hard. It was hard. It was challenging. And so I'm really happy that it's coming out a lot more. And I still have a book and a talk, and I'm so happy to talk about that if it's the right thing. But I realized I think I'm supposed to help more people in other ways. So that's when I developed Captivate the Crowd. And that's
Say that again. Captivate the crowd.
Captivate the crowd. Yes. And camera. Because I realized a lot of people, as kids, we're like, right? We're in the moment. We're happy. We're sad. We're not freaking out about the past or the future. And then life happens, our family happens, right? And so my goal is to help people express themselves on camera or doing live or trying comedy. And so I have this program that I take people through And yes, we talk about lighting and camera and crafting your story, but we also talk about like, what's that inner block? Let's work through that.
Yeah. Well, you know blocks. You've been there, so you could recognize them. And it sounds like, in a way, you kind of tickle people inside that makes them find their own laughter and be able to be lighter, laughter, learning, all of it together.
Yes, I love it. And, I don't know about you. I think sometimes we develop things because we needed them, So like, I can't tell how many times, like, I'm at home, I've warmed up, I've visualized, I've run my set, I'm ha ha ha, I'm ready to go, right? With my comedy or my speaking or, and then you get in the car and then there's traffic and then you get to the event and you just start to kind of melt, right? Or you come and you're fine when you get there and then somebody goes, "Bleh," and before you know it, you're like in a pretzel because of other people's energy that you picked up or whatever. So I've learned so many tips from auditioning and, how do you stay your biggest, best self, right? Well, you stay away from the crazy people, you sign in and then you move away. I walk around, I don't sit because if I sit, that's when I start to collapse. I do lots of movement and breathing. I will, you just learn different things to do to stay in your zone. When I did America's Got Talent, I got through 11 gatekeepers. I had an appointment and I just was like, my goal is to be unstoppable and to at least be seen once because, it was a crazy call, but I had an appointment. So I kept saying, I have an appointment with Kewen. And then people go, oh. And so I just kept going through the gates. And then when you audition for industry, they always say they don't laugh, they don't look at you. So I had brought my t-shirts. So I handed out my t-shirts and in my 4 minutes. And I did my 4 minutes and they watched me and they laughed, which makes you funnier, right? And so I was like, oh my God. And they're like, don't change anything, do it again. And so I went through that. So I learned so much. Like next time, bring more t-shirts, Elaine, right? But each level of judges was slightly less friendly. And then I got through 6 rounds and then I did the interview. And, I don't think my act was like big enough, gladiator enough for the show, but I'm so proud that I did that, and so my goal is to use all of those techniques to help to teach people those so that when they are going to go do their big talk or they're on set and, sometimes you're ready to go and they're like, can you hold? Because there's an airplane or they have to rehang a light. And so I learned another trick I'll share. If you, like you're ready to go and then like, oh, we need to fix something. So a lot of times people go, okay. And then you go in your head, right? And so I will tell them, I'm going to talk to my friend or the co-host, but please interrupt us when you're ready. Because if I can focus on the other person and just talk to them for a minute and not sit there going, oh God, stay open, blah, blah, blah. Like I learned that is going to help me stay open and more in my zone, that if I'm sitting there in my head going, what's happening? So like, it's like nuances, but it's just ways to keep us expanded and coming from our heart and our best self, right? Versus, hi, I'm really excited to be here. Or,
Yeah,
things we do.
Close down as opposed to open up. Well, that tip, what you just shared about how to stay open, is like there's a channel that you've created if you engage with somebody else. So there's kind of a circle. You're listening to somebody, you're speaking to somebody. It's not just you in your head trying to speak to yourself. It's the actual connection, I think is the word we're looking for here, that you stay connected to another human being and that helps you stay open.
Yes. And I want to make an addendum to that too, is now that's a specific person you're on set with. Before I go on stage, like for comedy, if I have people coming up, Elaine, or fans or friends, I'm like, talk to me after. Let's talk after, because I am nervous.
Mhm.
And it takes energy to try to like sort of be present, but I'm not really present because I'm trying to breathe and remember my set and not get distracted. So I feel like that set tip is like a specific on set, it's one person, it's easy to get to accidentally allow your energy to dissipate or get scrambled. So, there's nuances, but you want to be able to be like, yeah, I'm here, let's do this, instead of like stumbling on stage. Oh my God, I just had to listen to this crazy, or whatever.
This
So,
crazy fan.
yeah. Or one time the comic yelled at me right before I went on stage and I could not get it together. It just threw me. I could not, and all my friends in Austin were there and I was just like, oh, well, that was not the best set. Okay, nobody died. You move on,
Well, you just said something about self-acceptance there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you've offered everybody a chance to listen to you, to learn from you, hopefully to laugh a little, because you are entertaining just being who you are.
Oh, thank you.
So how do people find you? Where do they look for you to get more help?
Well, thank you so much. I have to say, I just created the hottest handout about story, your signature story, which you can use for video or live stage, because everybody's wanting to get back out again. So if you want to get this hot handout, please contact me at Elaine at captivatethecrowd.com. CAPTIVATETHECROWD.com. I hope I did that right.
Captivate the Crowd, Elaine at Captivate the Crowd. And people can get...
you can just say, I want the story handout, or I heard you with Doreen, whatever. I will answer.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, before I close this episode, I'll just tap into, just in the moment, what would be something you'd want to share with us, some last words? Yeah.
When we can drop in, it's such a gift to ourselves and to the world. And I would encourage everybody, the more you can drop in and be in your body, on stage and on camera, that gives you access to your authentic you. And the bonus prize is, a lot of times when you're really being yourself, you're funny without even trying. So it's a bonus and it takes a little practice, but if you can just practice that, that is another extra bonus.
That was very beautiful. I have to say, those who can't see you or who may be listening, is what you did was just demonstrate dropping down. You put your hands together in front of your heart and you just took this breath, and I felt you drop down and then found those words, those beautiful words to end our show today. Thank you, Elaine.
Oh, thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.